Okay, so today is super exciting for us because we are with basically Star Wars royalty. If you're a big Star Wars nerd, you already know who this guy is. But for those of you that aren't cool enough to know that already, this is Steve Sansweet.
Hello.
He is an icon in the Star Wars fan community. He has kind of elevated fandom to something that is collaborative with creators, a really exciting experience for everybody. So we're going to talk to him about it. But what a lot of people know him from is collecting. This guy has literally written the book, and many, about Star Wars collecting. Okay, how did your collection start?
It started with one object. I had been collecting Japanese robots and space toys. Star Wars came out, blew me away. But I had previously gotten a brochure that 20th Century Fox and Lucasfilm sent out to try to get movie theaters to book movies, unsuccessfully. And they also sent some to journalists. It came to the guy at the Wall Street Journal who was writing about films at the time.
Gotcha.
And he tossed it. And he left a little early, and all the other reporters being yakety yaks. I didn't want to just deliver, so I sort of sidled over to the trash can. And it was my first dumpster diving for Star Wars, but by far not the last.
There's treasure in trash, y'all.
Oh, yeah.
So as your collection started to grow, at what point did you really realize it was something special?
Well, I had a one-story house on stilts east of Hollywood in the Los Feliz section of Los Angeles. That then became a two-story house. That then became a three-story house. And a one-storage locker became 5. And by that time, I sort of realized that, gee, I had a lot of stuff. And actually, in the mid to late 80s, a lot of collectors were getting out of Star Wars. There was no promise of any more movies.
Right.
They were getting divorces and had to monetize the collection. And I took advantage of all of that. And I vastly increased my collection with things I never knew existed before. This was before the internet. We didn't know a whole lot. So I spent a lot of money in the late 80s when there was nothing Star Wars new out there, taking pieces of collections that had been built with love and passion earlier.
Those of us that are into Star Wars like to call those the dark times.
They were, in a way, but they were good for me.
So what is your favorite piece in your collection? I know that's a very Sophie's Choice question.
Yeah, well, usually I answer that by like, okay, how many kids do you have? Oh, 4. Well, who's your favorite? Sometimes the person says. But I think the most significant piece to me is a banner. It's 8 feet long, it's canvas, it has wood poles on the top and bottom. And this is the banner that Lucasfilm took to conventions in 1976, a year before Star Wars came out. A guy named Charlie Lippincott, who was head of marketing and merchandising and publicity and everything else, really started what we know today as fan relations by going, he was a comic book geek himself. So he was at the 6th Star Wars San Diego Comic-Con. They had a room that wasn't quite full. He was showing slides, talking about the comic book, and he had a table. And because Lucasfilm didn't have a lot of money, they were selling the first poster instead of giving it away for $1.75. Today you can't touch it for less than $1,000, of course. And they had this banner on the table, and then it showed up at Worldcon in September when Mark Hamill and Gary Kurtz, the producer, were there, and they had a room of props. Anyway, that banner ended up in my collection. And about 8 years ago, Ralph McQuarrie was over, the great Ralph McQuarrie.
Amazing.
And he said, I remember painting that banner. And I said, you hand painted a can? Oh yeah, I did whatever they asked me to do. And it has Ralph's iconic image of Starkiller, the composite character from the first draft of the screenplay, who became Luke, a little bit of Han, a little bit of Obi-Wan, and a much different logo that was done by the artist who created the poster for the iconic Endless Summer movie, the surfing movie, and did a lot of Phil Graham posters and things like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, do you just wrap yourself up in it?
No, because it would probably crack, which is why it's not here.
Nice. So, this is probably not the case. Is there anything out there that you've always wanted but never got your hands on?
I made the mistake in the first interview I ever did on my collection with the late lamented Starlog magazine, and they asked me, what's your Holy Grail? And this was like 87, 88. And I said, you know, I always regret passing up the Return of the Jedi kids bicycle at Toys R Us, 70 bucks. I'd love to get it mint in the box. And when the article came out about 2 months later, that first week I got a call from a dealer on the West Coast and the East Coast. We've got your bike. Like, yeah, how much? And they each quoted the same price.
Exorbitant?
$2,000.
Yeah.
I said I'll pass. Even back then, I wasn't that crazy, nor did I have the money.
Yeah.
So yeah, I eventually got it for a lot less money.
Okay, how many people ask you to value their blue snaggletooth?
You know, people come and ask me to do valuations. I think they know by now that, I mean, the main answer is, well, it's worth or value is what somebody else is willing to pay for it. I can't tell you that because I'm not in the market. And I did 2 price guides years ago, but the only reason I wanted to do the price guides was to get the information out there on all the stuff that was available. The prices are set one way. You want to know what a price for something should be, look on eBay for completed sales, and if you can find a recent completed sale of what you want to price, that's the price.
So, this one might be tricky. We're in the Rebels era. Rebels is getting really, really popular because it's super awesome. There's a lot of complaining about not being able to get the female characters like Sabine and Hera, and Chopper is really hard to find. I'm still on the hunt for mine. What are your thoughts on how that could maybe shift and how it could be fixed?
I think the problem is distribution and what Hasbro expected in terms of numbers, and the fact that they know that, you know, like in the original movies, the sales of Leia characters was, you know, way low. Nobody bought all those beautiful Amidala dolls for episode 1. Well,
I bought every one of them.
I did too.
Yes.
So we both have them in our collection. Yeah, they're amazing.
They're gorgeous.
But they have to realize that with girl geek power these days, these are things, you know, with Ashley Eckstein and her universe, it's a matter of cost versus what people are buying versus assortments, and you know, you have to really be on that and get quick feedback. But it takes time to produce these things. So
Well, and stores have to buy in and be willing to place the orders.
They do, and people complain, oh, Hasbro has a show. Well, Hasbro would love to sell a lot more stuff to the stores, but if the retailers aren't buying, I get disappointed. I go into our local Walmart, which is sort of a grade D Walmart, and at Christmas time, they had no Star Wars section on the shelf. What? And Target, which does have a pretty good Star Wars section, it's always empty because people are buying it already.
Yeah,
so
it's all peg warmers.
It's fine. Well, and people assume, of course, that I'm sent one of everything. No, I go out to Toys R Us and make my runs to Target, and just like everybody else.
Just like the rest of us. So, you are not only just a big fan of Star Wars, you're an insider. You worked for Lucasfilm for 15 years. Tell us what that was about.
Well, I never thought I would leave my job at the Wall Street Journal. I had a wonderful job, the best job in journalism. I was bureau chief in Los Angeles for 9 years. But they said, yeah, you've overstayed your welcome by a factor of 3. They always like to move new people in to promote, and so they wanted me to go back to New York or do something else in LA. And I got this call out of the blue from Lucasfilm, from Lynn Hale, the head of publicity, who I knew because I was writing Star Wars books, saying, Steve, we're looking for a suggestion of someone who might be willing to come in, 1 year only job, guaranteed 1 year only, to go out, and somebody that we can have on our payroll, paid for by Fox, at 1/3 of the salary I was making at the Wall Street Journal, and go out and do maybe 8 to 10 fan conventions for the special editions. The worst idea in the world. So naturally, I took it. I followed my bliss, as Joseph Campbell would say.
Well, you ended up putting together a lot of the StarWars.com team and getting that out there and kind of really setting a lot of groundwork for what is completely commonplace for fan interaction today.
I was there when we pressed the button for StarWars.com to go live in the outer office of the then president of Lucasfilm. And we're all looking at it, and the lawyer was looking at it, and it was just like, and in the early days, president of Lucasfilm was a really nice guy, but really detail-oriented. Every story that ran on Star Wars, and we refreshed at least once a week, or tried to, and he had to look at and hand-edit every piece of copy. That was fun. So
oh my goodness.
That eventually tailed off.
Nice. Now you retired from Lucasfilm to set up Rancho Obi-Wan.
I retired in April 2011. And I had been looking towards retirement and thinking, you know, what am I going to do? The sands and beaches of Maui sounded really good. You know, I can't retire. And I have this passion for Star Wars I've had since the beginning. And so we had a really nice sort of warehouse, 10,000, well, at that point, about 6,000 square feet of former chicken barn. There were egg-laying chickens in there until the 70s. There's still some chicken souls floating around. But it was, you know, I had friends who came over, but it really was set up more as a warehouse, and you can go look at all the stuff, but it was open and on the shelves. And that's when my associate Ann Newman, who has now been with us for 9 years, and Consetta Parker, I said, I can't charge people for tours. And I said, no, but a nonprofit could. And so that's when we decided to incorporate Rancho Obi-Wan, become a 501c3, and the money we raise goes towards maintenance and security and utilities and things like that. But all the things in the collection are mine. It's my ridiculousness and spending, and I rent that to Rancho Obi-Wan for $0 a year. Nice. The same thing with the buildings. And so we became a nonprofit, and that has become a full-time job.
Well, because you guys do a lot of outreach. You don't just let people come to the museum, you give lectures, you do education. Can you talk a little bit about how you're kind of using Star Wars and Rancho Obi-Wan to really give some pretty high-level community benefit? We
love having visits that we don't charge for school kids or other associational groups. And we talk about whatever the teacher would like us to talk about. Creativity, jobs in the film industry. My favorite is obviously to talk about creativity. As you see in our booth here, we have artists and fans who have been so inspired by the passion that they have for Star Wars that they want to create things. And the thing about Lucasfilm from the very beginning is that it has been open. Well, there have been some missteps along the way early on.
As anyone would make.
But yeah, it has really been open to the fan community in so many ways, and that includes letting fans play in George's Sandbox. It's a huge galaxy. There's so many things to do. There's so many people who have been inspired by Star Wars. Yeah. A lot of them artists, people going into filmmaking, astronauts. I mean, we've had Luke's lightsaber up in space. Yeah.
So what is your ideal vision for Rancho Obi-Wan? Like in the future, what do you want it to be, and what are the long-term plans?
Long term is something that I'm giving serious consideration to now. I'd like the collection to be reserved, as most collectors would, but it's a huge collection. We've got over 500,000 unique pieces in it. Only a fraction of it is on display, and an even tinier fraction, maybe 1/15 of 1%, is here at Star Wars Celebration Anaheim. I would like to preserve the legacy of what I've acquired, because this particular collection could never be put together again, and a lot of it is my personality and what I love, as well as, you know, the basic, all the action figures and things like that. For the near-term future, have you been over to the StarWars.com area, the cantina, the beautiful set that they have built?
Yes, I yearn to sleep there at night.
Well, maybe you'll have the chance at Rancho Obi-Wan, because they've offered it to me.
Don't dangle that carrot, Steve.
We'll probably have to do an Amish barn raising in order to get a facility to cover it. But they don't want to destroy it. They can't keep storing it. So we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, it's a huge piece. Oh, that's awesome. So there you have it. Like, basically, creativity, joy, and delight. And if you're a fan, you kind of owe a debt to this guy. Tell us how we can find you.
You can go online to ranchoobiwan.org and find all about becoming a member for $40 a year. There's no more Star Wars fan club, and you know, we always used to look forward to getting those packets every year. We do that now. We have patches and pins and just all kinds of cool stuff. And that also enables you to take a tour of Rancho Obi-Wan. We basically schedule a minimum of 2 tours a week on Fridays and Saturdays, and I lead all the tours. And it's not just going into the museum, it's 3 to 4 hours if you can stand that long. And it's my personal stories and anecdotes about all of these wonderful items, how they came about. Some behind-the-scenes stories that I probably shouldn't be telling, but you know, that's part. Yes, there's some juicy, and some things I'm rather proud of, and some things I'm less proud of.
Perfect. So check it out, because seriously, this is some amazing stuff, and you're missing out if you don't know about it.
This magnificent painting is the world's largest Star Wars oil painting, done by an artist in San Francisco, Robert Xavier Burton. So it's called 20th Century Space Opera, and it's Robert's toys that he played with.